The police officer looked at Karen, then at me, then back at his notepad. "Ma'am, you called 911 because your neighbor is grilling hamburgers." Karen's face turned crimson. "It's against HOA rules. I have the authority to—" "You have the authority to waste police resources," the officer interrupted, closing his notebook with a sharp snap. That was the moment I knew something wasn't right about our self-proclaimed HOA board member. I just didn't know how deep the lies went. "My name is Mike Stevens, and I've lived in Riverside Meadows for 8 years. It's one of those planned communities where every house looks slightly different, but somehow exactly the same cream or tan, with perfectly manicured lawns and mailboxes that all match. When my wife Sarah and I moved here, we loved it. The neighborhood was quiet, the schools were excellent, and the HOA seemed reasonable. Seemed being the operative word. Barbara Martinez had been our HOA president for 6 years. She was a retired school principal with silver hair always pulled back in a neat bun, wire-rimmed glasses, and a warm smile that made you feel like everything would be okay. Barbara ran the HOA like she probably ran her school, with fairness, clear rules, and genuine care for the community. Monthly dues were $65. Meetings were transparent, and when someone had a legitimate concern, Barbara listened. Then Karen Whitmore bought the house next to mine in March of 2023. Karen was in her mid-40s, with severely straightened blonde hair, designer athleisure, where that probably cost more than my car payment, and an expression that suggested she perpetually smelled something unpleasant. Within 2 weeks of moving in, she'd already complained about my lawn. It was fine. My fence also fine, and the fact that my garbage cans were visible from the street on trash day, literally everyone's were. "I just think we should maintain certain standards," she said, standing on my driveway uninvited one Saturday morning. "After all, property values are everyone's concern." "The HOA has standards," I replied politely. "My lawn meets them." "Well, perhaps the standards need to be raised," she sniffed. "I'm actually joining the HOA board next month. Things are going to change around here." I watched her walk away, her yoga pants and matching jacket ensemble somehow looking aggressive. At the next HOA meeting in April, Karen indeed joined the board as a regular member, not an officer, just one of 7 board members who voted on community issues. Barbara welcomed her warmly, explained the bylaws, and expressed hope that Karen's energy would benefit the community. "Just remember," Barbara said kindly, "we're all neighbors here. The goal isn't to police each other, but to maintain a community we all enjoy living in." Karen smiled tightly. I could tell she had different ideas about what Mainta meant. Over the next few months, Karen became increasingly aggressive about what she perceived as violations. She'd leave notes on cars parked on the street, even though street parking was allowed. She'd take photos of children's toys left in yards overnight, claiming they were eyesores. She started attending every single HOA meeting, usually bringing a list of complaints about various neighbors. Barbara handled her with remarkable patience. "Karen, Mrs. Rodriguez's garden gnomes aren't against any rules. They're actually quite charming. Karen, Mr. Thompson is allowed to paint his front door navy blue. It's within the approved color palette. Karen, children's bicycles on front lawns aren't violations." But Karen wasn't deterred. If anything, she became more determined. She started bringing printed copies of what she claimed were HOA regulations to meetings documents. Barbara politely corrected, noting that many of the rules Karen cited didn't actually exist in our community's bylaws. "I think you're confusing our bylaws with those from another community," Barbara would say. "I know what I'm reading," Karen would snap back. Things escalated in June, when I decided to throw a backyard barbecue for the 4th of July. Sarah and I sent invitations to several neighbors, including Barbara, who happily accepted. We didn't invite Karen, mainly because we weren't close, and she'd made it clear she found our family's casual attitude toward property maintenance distasteful. The party was scheduled for July 4th, a Tuesday. We'd invited about 20 people, neighbors, Sarah's co-workers, and a few friends from outside the community. Nothing crazy, just burgers, hot dogs, potato salad, and apple pie. Very American, very wholesome, very normal. On Yuli Thea, Karen knocked on my door at 7:30 in the evening. I opened it to find her holding her phone, showing me a photo she'd clearly just taken of our backyard, where Sarah and I were setting up tables and stringing lights. "I need you to cancel your party," she announced. "Excuse me? Your party? Tomorrow. It's not approved. According to HOA regulations, any gathering of more than 10 people requires board approval 72 hours in advance." "That's not a rule," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I've read our bylaws, cover to cover. There's no such requirement." "I have it right here," Karen said, pulling out a printed document. Section 12. Subsection D. Large gatherings require advance notice. I took the paper from her hand and scanned it. The formatting was wrong. Our actual HOA documents used a different font and header style. More importantly, the section numbers didn't match our real bylaws. "Karen, this isn't from our HOA. Where did you get this?" Her face flushed. "It's the updated bylaws. The board approved them last month." "No, we didn't." Barbara's voice came from behind her. I hadn't noticed her approaching for her evening walk. "Karen, we discussed this at the last meeting." "You can't create new rules on your own." "I'm protecting property values," Karen said defensively, "by making up regulations." Barbara's voice was kind but firm. "Mike, your party is fine. Have a wonderful time." Karen's jaw clenched. Without another word, she turned and stalked back to her house, slamming her door hard enough that I heard it from my porch. "She's been doing this a lot lately," Barbara sighed. "I'm concerned. She seems to genuinely believe she has more authority than she does." "Should we be worried?" I asked. "I'm keeping an eye on it," Barbara assured me. "If it gets worse, we may need to have a board discussion about her position. For now, just enjoy your party." July 4th arrived, sunny and warm. By noon, our backyard was filled with the smell of charcoal, the sound of laughter, and the sight of kids running through the sprinkler Sarah had set up. It was perfect. At 1:15, 3 police cars pulled up in front of my house. I was at the grill, flipping burgers, when Sarah ran over. "Mike, there are cops at the front door." My stomach dropped. I handed the spatula to my friend Dave and hurried through the house. Through the front window, I could see 2 officers talking to Karen, who was gesturing animatedly toward my house. A 3rd officer was walking up my driveway. I opened the door before he could knock. "Can I help you, officer?" He was young, maybe late 20s, with a professional but slightly apologetic expression. "Sir, we received a noise complaint about a large, unauthorized gathering." "Are you hosting a party?" "I'm having a 4th of July barbecue in my backyard. About 20 people." "Is there a problem?" From the street, I heard Karen's voice. "There's also the fire hazard. He's using an illegal grill." The officer glanced back at her, then at me. "Is your grill legal, sir?" "It's a standard charcoal grill. I've used it for years." "May I see it?" "Of course." I led him through the house to the backyard, where my guests had all stopped talking and were watching nervously. The officer examined my grill, perfectly ordinary Weber that was sitting safely on my concrete patio, away from any structures. "This is fine," he said. "It's clearly being used responsibly." "Officer, you need to see the crowd." Karen had followed us and was now standing at my back gate. "This is a residential neighborhood, not a public park." The officer looked at the gathering families eating hamburgers, kids playing, elderly neighbors chatting in lawn chairs. His expression hardened slightly. "Ma'am, this is a private party on private property. There's no violation here." "But the HOA rules..." "HOA rules aren't criminal law," he interrupted, "unless there's an actual disturbance or legal violation. This isn't a police matter." That's when Barbara appeared at the gate, slightly out of breath. Someone must have called her. "Officer, I'm Barbara Martinez, the HOA president. There is absolutely no rule against Mr. Stevens' party. Ms. Whitmore has been repeatedly informed of this." The officer looked between them, understanding dawning in his eyes. He pulled out his notepad. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, You called 911 because your neighbor is grilling hamburgers. Karen's face turned crimson. It's against HOA rules. You have the authority to waste police resources, the officer interrupted, closing his notebook with a sharp snap. False emergency calls are a misdemeanor. I'm going to let this go with a warning, but if you continue to make frivolous calls, you will be cited. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. But I'm on the HOA board. I don't care if you're the President of the United States, the officer said. You can't call 911 because you don't like your neighbor's barbecue. Do you understand? She nodded stiffly, her face now bright red. The officer tipped his hat to me and Barbara, then escorted Karen firmly back to her own property. The other two officers, looking equally annoyed, followed. Barbara turned to me with a sigh. Mike, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, I said, though my hands were shaking slightly. Having police show up at your 4th of July barbecue wasn't exactly how I'd planned to spend the holiday. No, but it's my responsibility as president to address this, Barbara said firmly. This has gone too far. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. Karen's behavior is becoming a liability to the community. As Barbara left, I returned to my guests, trying to laugh off the incident. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Karen wasn't just aggressive or overzealous. The fake bylaws, the absolute conviction that she had authority she didn't possess, the willingness to call the police over a backyard barbecue, all suggested something deeper. That evening, after the guests had left and Sarah and I were cleaning up, I sat down at my computer. I couldn't get Karen's fake bylaws out of my head. They'd looked so official, so specific. Where would someone get something like that? I started searching. HOA bylaws templates, sample HOA regulations, standard community guidelines. After about an hour, I found them. Karen's fake bylaws were a word-for-word copy of sample documents from a website called managementtemplates.co. She'd literally just printed out generic templates and tried to pass them off as our community's rules. But as I dug deeper, something else caught my eye. The website offered something else. Professional HOA Management Certification Course. Become a Certified Community Association Manager in just 6 weeks. My mind started racing. Karen constantly referenced her expertise in HOA management. She'd mentioned at multiple meetings that she had professional training and certification in community association management. She'd even put CCAM after her name on emails, Certified Community Association Manager. I wondered. I found the website for the National Certification Body for Community Association Managers. They had a public database where you could verify someone's credentials. I typed in Karen's name. No results found. I tried variations. Karen Whitmore. K. Whitmore. Karen M. Whitmore. Nothing. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. Karen had been representing herself as a certified professional, using credentials she didn't have. She'd been making up rules, citing false authority, and now she'd called the police on a legal gathering while claiming HOA authority she didn't possess. This wasn't just an overzealous neighbor. This was fraud. Sarah, I called, you need to see this. My wife came over, drying her hands on a dish towel. I showed her what I'd found. Her eyes widened. We need to tell Barbara, she said immediately. First thing tomorrow. I agreed. But as I closed my laptop, I couldn't help but wonder, what else had Karen lied about? And what would she do when her lies were exposed? Mike discovers Karen has been lying about her credentials, but what else has she fabricated? And how will she react when exposed? Have you ever dealt with a neighbor who lied about their authority? Share your story in the comments. The next morning, I called Barbara at 8 o'clock. She answered on the second ring, her voice already carrying the weight of someone who'd been awake for hours, worrying about community issues. Mike, I was just about to call you, she said. I've been thinking about yesterday, all night. We need to address this situation with Karen immediately. Barbara, it's worse than you think, I replied. I did some research last night. Karen's been lying about her credentials. There was a pause. What do you mean? She claims to be a certified community association manager. She puts the letters C, come after her name in emails. I checked the National Registry. She's not certified. She never has been. I heard Barbara's sharp intake of breath. Are you absolutely certain? I checked 3 times. Different name variations. She's not in the system, and those fake bylaws she's been quoting, they're templates from a website. She just printed them out and pretended they were our rules. Mike, this is serious. This goes beyond being overzealous. This is fraudulent misrepresentation. She's been claiming professional authority. She doesn't have to intimidate neighbors. What do we do? I asked. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tonight, Barbara said firmly. Can you come? I'll need you to present what you found. I'll be there, I promised. The emergency board meeting was held at Barbara's house at 7 o'clock that evening. The 7 board members sat around her dining room table. Barbara, Karen, Tom Chun, the treasurer, Maria Gonzalez, the secretary, and 3 at-large members: David Park, Jennifer Williams, and Robert Hayes. I was invited to attend as a concerned resident. Karen arrived last, walking in with her usual air of superiority. She was carrying a leather portfolio and wearing what I'd come to think of as her official outfit, a gray pantsuit with a silk scarf. She frowned when she saw me. Why is he here? Se demanded. This is a board meeting. I invited Mike, Barbara said calmly. Please, sit down, Karen. We have important matters to discuss. Karen sat, but her jaw was tight. If this is about yesterday, I was well within my rights to call the police. There were clear violations. Karen? Barbara interrupted gently but firmly. Before we discuss yesterday, I need to ask you something. You've represented yourself as a certified community association manager. Is that correct? Karen's back. Straightened, yes, of course. I have extensive training in HOA management. It's one of the reasons I joined this board, to bring professional expertise to which organization certified you, Barbara asked. The National Board of Certification for Community Association Managers, Karen said without hesitation. It's a rigorous program. I completed it 2 years ago. Barbara looked at me and nodded. I opened my laptop and turned it to face the board members. This is the public registry for certified community association managers, I said. It's maintained by the organization Karen just mentioned. I searched for her name last night. She's not in the database. Karen's face flushed red. That's ridiculous. Obviously, your search was incorrect. I have my certification at home. I can bring it. I searched multiple variations of your name. I continued. Karen Whitmore? K. Whitmore? Karen M. Whitmore? Nothing. I even called the certification board this morning. They have no record of you ever taking their courses or exams. The room went silent. Every board member was staring at Karen. This is absurd, Karen sputtered. Why would I lie about something so easily verified? That's exactly what I'd like to know, Barbara said quietly. Karen, lying about professional credentials is a serious matter. If you've been representing yourself as a certified professional to give weight to your positions on this board, that's fraud. I don't have to sit here and be accused. Karen started to stand. Sit down, Tom Chun said sharply. It was the first time I'd heard the normally mild-mannered treasurer raise his voice. You owe this board an explanation. We've been deferring to your supposed expertise for months. How much of what you've told us has been lies? Karen slowly sank back into her chair. Her hands were shaking. I took an online course a few years ago. It was about HOA management. I thought they qualified me to use the designation. What course? Maria Gonzalez asked, her pen poised over her notepads. As secretary, she was documenting everything. I don't remember the exact name, Karen said, not meeting anyone's eyes. It was just a course. I didn't realize there was a difference between taking a course and being officially certified. Karen, Barbara said, her voice sad rather than angry. You specifically claimed to be certified by the National Board. You put the letters CCAM after your name. That's not confusion. That's deliberate misrepresentation. I pulled out the printed copies of Karen's fake bylaws. And what about these? These aren't our community's bylaws. They're generic templates from a website. You've been presenting them as official HOA rules to intimidate neighbors into compliance. Karen's face had gone from red to pale. I was just trying to help. This community needs stronger standards. People are too casual about property maintenance. I was trying to show what proper HOA governance looks like by making up rules. David Park shook his head. Karen, you can't just invent regulations because you think they should exist. That's not how any of this works. And calling the police on Mike's 4th of July barbecue, Jennifer Williams added, a legal gathering on his own property. You claimed HOA authority to law enforcement that could have serious consequences for this community. Karen stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You know what? Fine. You want me off the board? I resign. This community doesn't deserve my expertise anyway. You're all too small-minded to understand what I was trying to accomplish. Karen, Barbara started. No, Karen interrupted. Done. Done with this board. Done with these meetings. Done with trying to help people who don't want to be helped. Without proper leadership, this neighborhood will deteriorate. Property values will plummet. And don't come crying to me when it happens. She grabbed her portfolio and stormed out, slamming Barbara's front door hard enough to rattle the windows. The 6 remaining board members sat in stunned silence. Well, Robert Hayes finally said, that went better than expected. At least, we don't have to go through formal removal proceedings. I'm more concerned about what she might do next, Tom said. She's clearly unstable. She genuinely believed she had authority she didn't have, and now she's humiliated and angry. Should we be worried? Maria asked. Barbara sighed. I don't know. I hope she'll just stay away from HOA business now. But Mike, I'd suggest you keep an eye on your property. People don't usually react well to being exposed. I nodded, but I felt uneasy. Karen had seemed genuinely shocked that anyone had challenged her authority. What would she do now? That her lies had been exposed. The answer came 3 days later. I was at work on July 10th when Sarah called me, her voice shaking. Mike, you need to come home now. What's wrong? I asked, already grabbing my keys. Someone's filed a complaint with the city. There's an inspector at our house right now. He says we have multiple code violations and we're being fined. I made it home in 15 minutes, my heart pounding the entire drive. A city truck was parked in front of my house, and a man in a yellow safety vest was taking photographs of my property with a tablet. Are you the homeowner? He asked as I approached. Yes, I'm Mike Stevens. What's going on? He consulted his tablet. I'm Inspector Rodriguez with the City Code Enforcement Office. We received a complaint about multiple violations at this address. I'm conducting an inspection. What violations? Unpermitted structure in the backyard, fence height exceeding municipal code, drainage issues causing water runoff onto neighboring properties, and improper storage of waste containers. I stared at him. None of that is true. What unpermitted structure? He showed me his tablet. Someone had filed a detailed complaint claiming I had built a storage shed without permits. Is there a structure in your backyard, sir? Just my garden shed. It's been there for 6 years. It was here when we bought the house. May I see it? I led him to the backyard. My garden shed was a small prefabricated unit, about 6 feet by 8 feet, that the previous owners had installed. It held lawn equipment, gardening supplies, and kids' outdoor toys. Inspector Rodriguez measured it, took photos, and checked his tablet. This is under 80 square feet. It doesn't require a permit. There's no violation here. What about the other complaints? He measured my fence. This is exactly 6 feet. That's the maximum allowed height, but it's not a violation. He examined my drainage. I don't see any runoff issues. Your yard appears to be grading properly. He looked at my garbage cans. These are stored in your garage except on trash day, correct? Yes, Sarah confirmed. They're only out on the street Tuesday mornings. Inspector Rodriguez made notes on his tablet. Mr. Stevens, there are no violations at this property. None. Every complaint filed was either false or based on a misunderstanding of the code. Who filed the complaint? I asked, though I already knew. He hesitated. Complaints can be filed anonymously, but in this case, the complainant provided their name and contact information. A Ms. Karen Whitmore. She lives next door. My hands clenched into fists. Sarah put a hand on my arm. Is there anything we need to do? She asked the inspector. No, ma'am. I'll file a report stating no violations were found, but I should warn you if Ms. Whitmore continues to file false complaints. The city may take action against her for wasting municipal resources. After Inspector Rodriguez left, I stood in my driveway, staring at Karen's house. Her car was in the driveway. I knew she was home. I knew she was probably watching from her window, waiting to see if her revenge had worked. Mike, Sarah said softly, don't. She filed false complaints with the city, I said through gritted teeth. She lied to a government inspector to try to get us fined, and we're going to handle this the right way. We're going to document everything, and we're going to make sure she faces consequences for what she's doing. Sarah was right. As much as I wanted to march over there and confront Karen, that's exactly what she wanted. She wanted me angry, wanted me to lose my temper, wanted me to do something she could then report to someone. Instead, I went inside and started a file. I printed out the city inspector's report. I saved all of Karen's emails with the fake SICOM credentials. I made copies of her fraudulent bio. I documented the police call from the 4th of July with the incident report number the officer had given me. But Karen wasn't done. Over the next 2 weeks, she filed 3 more false complaints with the city. Each time, Inspector Rodriguez had to come out and verify that there were no violations. Each time, he looked more annoyed. Mr. Stevens, he said on his 4th visit, I've documented all of these false complaints. I'm forwarding this to my supervisor. Ms. Whitmore is going to receive a formal warning. If she continues, she'll be fined for harassment and misuse of city services. Karen also ramped up her campaign in the neighborhood. She went door to door, telling anyone who would listen that I had gotten her fired from the HOA board, that I was a troublemaker who was destroying property values, and that she had proof I was violating multiple rules. Most neighbors ignored her. They'd seen her behavior at HOA meetings. They knew she was the problem, not me. But a few newer residents, people who didn't know the full story, started looking at me suspiciously. Barbara tried to intervene. She sent a community-wide email explaining that Karen had resigned from the board, carefully not mentioning why. She emphasized that all HOA rules were available online and that residents should verify any alleged violations with the board directly rather than relying on hearsay. Karen responded by sending her own email to the entire community, claiming Barbara was engaged in a cover-up and that the board was corrupt. That's when Barbara called me with news that changed everything. Mike, I need you to come to my house tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock, and you might want to bring Sarah. What's going on? I've been doing some digging of my own into Karen's background, Barbara said, her voice tight. You are right to investigate her credentials, but her lies go much deeper than we thought. Much, much deeper. The next evening, Sarah and I sat in Barbara's living room. The HOA president looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes that suggested she hadn't been sleeping well. I probably shouldn't have done this, Barbara began, but after everything Karen has put this community through, I felt I needed to know who we were really dealing with. She pulled out a folder thick with printed documents. I hired a private investigator. Just a background check, nothing invasive. What he found, ... She shook her head. Karen Whitmore isn't her real name. Sarah and I exchanged shocked glances. Her legal name is Karen Whitmore now, Barbara continued, but she was born Karen Michelle Turner. She changed her name legally 7 years ago, right before she moved to this state. Why would she change her name? I asked. Barbara pulled out a news article. This is why. In 2015, in her previous state, Karen Turner was sued by her former HOA for harassment and defamation. She was serving on the board there, too. She made up violations, filed false complaints, and allegedly tried to force out several families she didn't like. The court ruled against her, ordered her to pay $67,000 in damages, and issued a permanent injunction barring her from serving on any HOA board in that state. I felt cold. She's done this before. Not just once, Barbara said grimly. The investigator found records of similar incidents in 2 other communities before that one. In each case, Karen joined the HOA board, began making false claims about violations, harassed neighbors she saw as beneath her standards, and ultimately either resigned or was forced out when her behavior became legally actionable. She's a serial HOA bully, Sarah whispered. Exactly, Barbara confirmed. She targets communities, joins the board, and uses her position to torment people she views as lowering property values or not meeting her standards. When things get too hot, she moves to a new state, sometimes changes her name, and starts over. Why? I asked. What does she get out of this? Barbara sighed. According to the court documents from her previous case, the psychologist who evaluated her suggested she has a pathological need for control and authority. She genuinely believes she's helping communities by enforcing what she sees as proper standards, but she can't accept that she doesn't have the authority she thinks she deserves, so she lies, invents credentials, makes up rules, all to create the illusion that her authority is legitimate. I thought about Karen's face when we'd exposed her fake certification, the genuine shock, the anger, the insistence that the community needed her expertise. It all made sense. Now, so what do we do? Sarah asked. Can we use this information? The investigator says we need to be careful, Barbara replied. Most of this is public record court documents, news, articles, property records. But we can't just post it online or send it to the whole community without potentially opening ourselves up to defamation claims, even if everything we say is true. But we can use it if she escalates, premeditated slowly. If she continues to harass us, continues to file false complaints, continues to spread lies about me or the board, then we have evidence of a pattern of behavior that proves she's acting in bad faith. Barbara nodded. Exactly. This information is our insurance policy. If Karen pushes this any further, we can take it to an attorney and potentially get a restraining order or file our own harassment charges. Her previous court cases prove she has a history of this exact behavior. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. Karen had spent months making my life miserable, filing false complaints, lying to authorities, and terrorizing our neighborhood. But now we knew the truth about who she really was. What I didn't know was that Karen was about to make one final, desperate play that would expose her completely and bring everything crashing down. Barbara discovers Karen has a history of HOA fraud in multiple states. What desperate move will Karen make next? Would you have confronted Karen immediately, or documented everything like Mike did? Let me know below. Karen's final move came on a Tuesday morning in late July. I was getting ready for work when my phone rang. It was Barbara, and she sounded panicked. Mike, we have a serious problem. Karen filed a lawsuit against the HOA, and she's named you personally as a defendant. My blood ran cold. What? I just got served with papers this morning. She's suing for wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress. She's claiming we conducted a witch hunt to force her off the board, that you manufactured evidence against her, and that the entire board conspired to humiliate her. She's asking for $250,000 in damages. I sat down heavily on my bed. Sarah looked at me with alarm. That's insane. She resigned. We didn't terminate her, and everything we said about her was true. I know my attorney says the suit is frivolous and won't survive a motion to dismiss, but in the meantime, we have to respond. You'll need to hire a lawyer. Mike, I'm so sorry. After hanging up, I explained the situation to Sarah. Her face went pale. $250,000. Mike, we don't have that kind of money. Even if we win, the legal fees alone could bankrupt us. I know, I said, my mind racing. But we have that information Barbara found. Karen's history. Her previous lawsuits, her name, change. If we can prove she has a pattern of this behavior, maybe we can get the case dismissed quickly. I called in sick to work and immediately started making phone calls. By noon, I had an attorney, a litigator named James Chun, who specialized in HOA disputes and civil harassment cases. He agreed to see me that afternoon. Mr. Chun's office was in a modern building downtown. He was in his early 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. I brought every document I had. The fake bylaws, the certification fraud evidence, the city inspector reports, and most importantly, Barbara's private investigator's findings about Karen's history. Mr. Chun read through everything methodically, making notes on a legal pad. When he had finished, he looked up at me with something resembling satisfaction. "Mr. Stevens, this is actually quite good for us. Your documentation is excellent. And this background information ... double. Quotes, he tapped the investigator's report. This is gold. It establishes a clear pattern of behavior. Karen Turner, as she was formerly known, has done this exact thing before. Multiple times. Can we use that in court?" I asked. "Absolutely. It's public record. Court documents are discoverable. Her history of similar lawsuits and harassment campaigns is directly relevant to whether her current claims are legitimate or simply another iteration of her established pattern of behavior. What are our chances?" Mr. Chun leaned back in his chair. "Very good. Her complaint is full of easily disprovable claims. She says she was wrongfully terminated, but she resigned voluntarily in front of multiple witnesses. She claims you manufactured evidence, but her fake credentials are a matter of public record. She either has a valid CCAM certification or she doesn't. The registry doesn't lie. She claims defamation, but truth is an absolute defense to defamation. Everything you said about her was factually accurate. So why would she file this lawsuit if she can't win?" Mr. Chun smiled grimly. "Because she's counting on you not being able to afford to fight it. These kinds of suits are called slap suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. The goal isn't to win. The goal is to intimidate you into silence through the threat of expensive litigation. She probably assumes you'll settle just to make it go away. I'm not settling," I said firmly. "She needs to face consequences for what she's done." "Good. Then here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to file a motion to dismiss on the grounds that her complaint fails to state a claim. Second, we're going to file a motion for sanctions against her and her attorney for filing a frivolous lawsuit. Third, we're going to countersue for malicious prosecution and abuse of process. Can we do that? Not only can we should. And here's the beautiful part: once we file our motion to dismiss, we get to conduct discovery. That means we can subpoena records from her previous lawsuits, take depositions from people she's harassed in other states, and build a comprehensive record of her pattern of behavior. By the time we're done, it won't just be this lawsuit that's dismissed. Karen Turner Whitmore is going to face real legal consequences for the first time in her life. I left Mr. Chun's office feeling simultaneously relieved and anxious. We had a strong case, but litigation was expensive and time-consuming. Even winning could take months and cost tens of thousands of dollars. When I got home, there was a letter in my mailbox. It was from Karen, handwritten on expensive stationery. "Mr. Stevens, I'm willing to settle this matter quietly. Drop your opposition to my lawsuit, convince Barbara and the board to issue a public apology for their treatment of me, and pay me $50,000 for my pain and suffering. In return, I'll dismiss the lawsuit and move out of the neighborhood within 60 days. This is a one-time offer. If you don't accept within 48 hours, the offer is withdrawn, and I will pursue full damages. Regards, Karen Whitmore. CSAM." She was still using the fake credential. Even now. The audacity was breathtaking. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to Mr. Chun. His response came back within minutes. "Perfect. This is evidence of attempted extortion. Forward this to me immediately. We're adding this to our countersuit." I didn't respond to Karen's letter. Instead, I waited. 3 days later, Mr. Chun filed our response. It was devastating. The motion to dismiss systematically dismantled every claim in Karen's lawsuit. The countersuit laid out her entire history. The previous lawsuits, the name change, the pattern of harassment, the fake credentials, the false complaints to city officials, and now the attempted extortion through her settlement offer. Mr. Chun also filed a complaint with the State Bar against Karen's attorney, alleging that the lawyer had failed to properly investigate his client's claims before filing a frivolous lawsuit. The effect was immediate and explosive. Karen's attorney withdrew from the case within 48 hours, leaving her to represent herself. The judge scheduled an expedited hearing on our motion to dismiss for 2 weeks out, and the local legal community began circulating our filing apparently. Karen's pattern of behavior was exactly the kind of abusive litigation that judges and attorneys hated. But Karen wasn't done fighting. Without an attorney, she became even more erratic. She started posting on social media, creating a Facebook page called Riverside Meadows Truth, where she claimed to be the victim of a conspiracy. She posted photos of my house, Barbara's house, and the other board members' homes. She wrote long rants about how we were destroying the community and harassing an innocent woman. Several neighbors reported the page to Facebook for harassment. It was taken down within 3 days. Karen responded by printing flyers and putting them on car windshields throughout the neighborhood. The flyers claimed that I was a con artist who had fabricated evidence and that Barbara was covering up corruption. Mr. Chun added this to our evidence file. She's digging herself deeper with every action, he told me. This is harassment, plain and simple. The judge is going to see a pattern of obsessive, vindictive behavior. The hearing on our motion to dismiss was scheduled for August 5th. I took the day off work and met Mr. Chun at the courthouse. It was a modern building with high ceilings and the smell of floor polish and tension. Karen was already there, sitting alone at the plaintiff's table. She dressed formally, a navy suit with her hair pulled back severely. She looked thin and tired, with dark circles under her eyes. When she saw me, her expression hardened. The judge was a woman in her 60s, named Judge Patricia Morrison. She had a reputation, Mr. Chun had told me, for not tolerating frivolous litigation or courtroom nonsense. Judge Morrison reviewed the files, then looked at Karen over her reading glasses. Ms. Whitmore, you're representing yourself in this matter? Karen stood. Yes, Your Honor. My previous attorney abandoned me after the defendants filed their malicious countersuit. Judge Morrison interrupted. Your attorney withdrew because he determined your lawsuit lacks merit. I've reviewed both your complaint and the defendant's motion to dismiss. I've also reviewed the background materials submitted by the defense, including court records from your previous lawsuits in 3 other states. Karen's face flushed. Those cases are not relevant to their extremely relevant, the judge said sharply. They establish a pattern of behavior. You've filed similar lawsuits against neighbors and HOA boards before. In each case, you claimed wrongful termination, harassment, and emotional distress. In each case, your claims were dismissed or you withdrew them before trial. In one case, you were ordered to pay significant damages for malicious prosecution. Your Honor, those were different circumstances, were they? Because from where I'm sitting, they look identical to this case. You joined an HOA board. You claimed credentials you didn't have. You harassed neighbors with fake violations. And when you were called out for it, you filed a retaliatory lawsuit. Judge Morris's voice was ice. That's not justice, Ms. Whit. That's abuse of the legal system. Karen's hands were shaking. I was trying to help the community. They were violating standards you invented. The judge said. The evidence shows you printed fake HOA bylaws from a website and tried to pass them off as legitimate rules. You claimed to be a certified professional when you had no such certification. You filed multiple false complaints with city inspectors, wasting government resources. You called police on a legal gathering. These aren't the actions of someone trying to help. These are the actions of someone with a pathological need to control others. Mr. Chun stood. Your Honor, if I may, you don't need to argue your motion. Mr. Chun, it's granted. Ms. Whitmore's complaint is dismissed with prejudice. She is barred from refiling. Karen made a small sound, like a gasp or a sob. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, I'm granting the defendant's motion for sanctions. Ms. You are ordered to pay the defendant's attorney fees and costs incurred in defending against this frivolous lawsuit. You're also ordered to pay a sanction of $5,000 to the court for abuse of process. I don't have $5,000, Karen whispered. Then I suggest you find it, the judge said. You should also know that I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office. Filing false police reports, making false statements to government officials, and attempted extortion are criminal matters they may choose to prosecute. Karen looked like she might faint. This isn't fair. I was just trying to maintain standards. No, Ms. Whitmore. You were trying to impose your will on others through deception and intimidation. There's a word for that. It's called bullying. And when you use the legal system to do it, it becomes something even worse. Judge Morrison's expression softened slightly. I genuinely hope you get help. Your pattern of behavior suggests you need psychological counseling, but what you don't need is to serve on any more HOA boards or to harass any more neighbors. The judge struck her gavel. We're adjourned. I sat there, stunned. It was over. Just like that. Not only had Karen's lawsuit been dismissed, but she was facing potential criminal charges. Mr. Chun shook my hand. Congratulations, Mr. Stevens. That's about as decisive a victory as you can get. I looked over at Karen. She was still sitting at her table, staring at nothing. She looked small and defeated, all her arrogance and false authority stripped away. Part of me felt sorry for her, but mostly I felt relief. Relief that it was over. Relief that she'd finally faced consequences. And relief that my family could go back to normal life. As we left the courtroom, Mr. Chun pulled me aside. Mike, I need to warn you about something. The judge referred this to the DA, which means there might be a criminal investigation. If that happens, you may be called to testify. I will, I said. Whatever it takes to make sure she can't do this to anyone else. Good, because based on her history, if she doesn't face real consequences now, she'll just move to another state and start over again. Someone needs to stop the cycle. I drove home, feeling like I was floating. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw Karen's house. Her car was there, but the blinds were all drawn. The house looked dark and empty, like no one lived there. Sarah met me at the door. Well, we won, I said. Complete dismissal. She has to pay our legal fees. And the judge referred her case to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. Sarah threw her arms around me. It's really over. Not quite, I said. There might be a criminal investigation. But the lawsuit is done. She can't sue us again. That evening, Barbara called to congratulate me. The board had received notice of the dismissal and was relieved. She also had news. Karen's house just went on the market. She listed it. This afternoon, a realtor is pricing it aggressively. She clearly wants to sell fast and get out of here. I wasn't surprised. Karen's entire strategy had been built on intimidation and false authority. Once that was stripped away, once she was exposed and facing legal consequences, she had nothing left. Running away to start over somewhere else was her only option. Good riddance, I said. Agreed, Barbara replied. But Mike, I want you to know something. What you did documenting everything, standing up to her, refusing to be intimidated, that probably saved this community. If you'd backed down, if you'd let her get away with it, she would have made life miserable for everyone here. I just wanted to protect my family, I said. You did. And you protected all of us in the process. After hanging up, I went outside to my backyard. It was a beautiful August evening, warm and calm. I fired up my grill, the same grill Karen had claimed was an illegal fire hazard, and started preparing dinner. As the charcoal heated up, I thought about everything that had happened. Karen's lies, her harassment, her lawsuit, the stress, the fear, the uncertainty, but also the support from my community, the strength of truth and documentation, and the satisfaction of seeing justice served. I heard a noise and looked up. Karen was standing at her back fence, watching me. For a moment, our eyes met. I expected anger or defiance. Instead, I saw something else. Defeat. Exhaustion. Maybe even shame. She turned away and walked back into her house without a word. It was the last time I ever saw her. The next morning, I learned why. But that revelation would bring one final twist to this already incredible story, a twist that would expose just how deep Karen's deceptions had gone and reveal the truth about why she'd targeted our community in the first place. Karen's lawsuit is crushed in court, and she faces criminal charges. But why did she really target this community? The final revelation is coming. The judge absolutely destroyed Karen in court. Have you ever seen justice served this perfectly? Comment below. The morning after the court hearing, I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was barely 6 o'clock. Multiple missed calls from Barbara and urgent texts. Mike, call me immediately. It's about Karen. Something happened. Primera led bike, and she answered instantly. Mike, the police are at Karen's house for patrol cars and detectives. They've been there since 5:30. I walked outside. Police vehicles lined Karen's driveway. Officers carried boxers out. Yellow crime scene tape cordoned off the perimeter. Detective Sarah Martinez approached Barbara and me. Mr. Stevens, I'm with the fraud division. We executed a search warrant this morning. Are you aware Karen Whitmore has been operating under multiple identities? We know she changed her name from Karen Turner, I said. It goes much deeper. Can you both come to the station this afternoon? At 2 o'clock, Sarah, Barbara, and I sat in a police conference room. Detective Martinez and her partner, Detective Robert Hayes, had set up a projector. Your documentation gave us probable cause to investigate. Detective Martinez began. What we found goes far beyond HOA harassment. She displayed a driver's license showing Karen's face with the name Catherine Windsor. This is one of 7 different identities. Karen has been using multiple names and social security numbers for 15 years. She's not just a serial HOA bully. She's a serial fraudster. Detective Hayes continued. Karen Michelle Turner is her birth name. She's 52, originally from Ohio. Her first documented incident was in 2005. She joined an HOA board, claimed fake certifications, and began forcing out families she deemed undesirable. When exposed, she moved to Pennsylvania as Catherine Windsor, then Arizona as Karen Whitmore, Texas as Karen Henderson, Florida as Catherine Morrison. Finally here, back to Karen Whitmore. In each location, same pattern, but in 3 locations, she didn't just harass people, she stole from them. The detective pulled up financial records. In Arizona, she embezzled $38,000 through fake landscaping invoices. In Texas, $22,000 through a shell consulting company. In Florida, $54,000 through fake vendors and inflated expenses. She was planning to do that here. Primera Asket. We found documents showing she'd registered Community Standards Consulting LLC using a fake address. We believe she planned to bill your HOA once she gained financial access. But she never became treasurer, Barbara said. Tom Chun has held that position for years. Exactly. That's why she became so aggressive. Her usual pattern is to work up the treasurer 10 MB. When your board structure didn't allow that, she couldn't execute her plan. The lawsuit was desperation when her primary scheme failed. How did she get away with this so long? Sarah asked. By moving frequently and using different names. She'd steal moderate amounts, not enough to trigger immediate alarms. HOAs often have loose oversight. By the time anyone noticed, she'd be gone. Different identities meant nobody connected the cases. Until now, Detective Martinez said, your documentation gave us the thread. Once we investigated Karen Whitmore, we found Catherine Windsor, then Karen Henderson. Each identity led to another. Where is she now? Gone. When we arrived this morning, the house was empty. She emptied her bank accounts yesterday afternoon right after court. We have an APB out, but she has a significant head start. She just runs away again. Barbara was incredulous. We're working with the FBI. This crosses state lines, making it federal. We've frozen what assets we could find, but she's likely been hiding money for years. She probably has cash stashed. Will she be caught? Eventually, yes, she's left a bigger trail this time. Between your civil case, our investigation, and the multi-state fraud pattern, she's facing serious federal charges: identity fraud, wire fraud, embezzlement, false police reports, perjury. When we catch her, she's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. The detective paused. There's something else. Something that explains why she targeted your community specifically. She displayed a photo of a man with gray hair and a kind face. Do you recognize him? Barbara leaned forward. That's George Martinez. He was our HOA president before me. He passed away 8 years ago. Heart attack. I took over after him. Why? George Martinez filed a complaint against Karen Turner in 2003 in Ohio. He was on an HOA board there and caught her falsifying reports and attempting embezzlement. His testimony got her removed and nearly prosecuted. The case was dropped for lack of evidence. But George Martinez's complaint is public record. She came here for revenge. I was stunned. Against a dead man, we think she targeted the community he loved. She moves here to Riverside Meadows, where George Martinez lived and served. Joins the board he once led. Uses the same tactics he exposed. Maybe she didn't know he'd died until after arriving. Or maybe she did and saw an opportunity to destroy his legacy by corrupting the community he cared about. Barbara had tears in her eyes. George would be heartbroken. Or, I said, he'd be proud that his community was strong enough to see through her lies and stand up to her. Barbara nodded, wiping her eyes. You're right. George always said, good communities are built on good people looking out for each other. That's exactly what we did. Over the next weeks, the full scope emerged. The FBI tracked Karen through 6 states over 15 years. Total embezzlement, over $200,000. She'd ruined lives, destroyed communities, exploited hundreds of people. The media picked up the story. Our local news ran the HOA Serial Fraudster series that went viral nationally. Barbara and I were interviewed, and our story became part of a larger narrative about HOA fraud and proper financial oversight. 3 months later, in November, Karen was arrested at a rest stop in Montana. She'd been living in her car, trying to reach Canada. The FBI tracked her credit card usage and caught her. Her trial was set for spring. Between federal charges and state charges, she faced 25 years minimum. No more name changes, no more moving, no more lies. Life in Riverside Meadows returned to normal. Barbara continued as HOA president. The board implemented new financial oversight procedures. The community healed. My legal fees totaled $15,000, but Karen's court-ordered payment covered most of it. More importantly, the suit exposed her before she could steal from our community. One Saturday in December, Barbara organized a community holiday party. The first real gathering since the 4th of July barbecue that started everything. As I stood watching neighbors laugh and children play, Sarah squeezed my hand. You did good. We all did, I replied. That's what communities do. Tom Chun approached with punch. Mike Botta wants you to know we're naming the new community garden after George Martinez, and we'd like you to serve on the HOA board. We have an opening. I laughed. After everything, you want me on the board? Especially after everything. You showed what a board member should be. Someone who cares about truth, fairness, and community. Someone who won't back down. That's what we need. I looked at Sarah, who nodded. Okay, I'll do it. 6 months later, in April, Karen's trial concluded. Found guilty on 17 federal counts and multiple state charges. The judge sentenced her to 22 years in federal prison, with restitution to all defrauded. No early release, no playa deals, no second chances. Barbara, Tom, and I attended the sentencing. When the judge read the sentence, Karen didn't react. She just sat there, small and defeated. All false authority finally stripped away permanently. It's really over, Barbara said as we left the courthouse. Yes, I agreed. It's really over. That evening, I grilled burgers for a simple family dinner. The same grill Karen called illegal. The same backyard where she sent police. The same property she filed false complaints about. But now No police cars, no angry neighbors, no fake violations. Just my family, my home, and the peaceful community we'd fought to protect. As I flipped burgers, I thought about what I'd learned, the importance of documentation, standing up to bullies, the power of community and truth. Sarum came outside with a cold drink. "What are you thinking?" "How lucky we are. Lucky to live in a good community. Lucky to have neighbors like Barbara. Lucky that we stood up when it mattered." "It wasn't just luck," Sarah said. "You made good choices. You documented everything. You didn't back down. You did the right thing, even when it was hard." I pulled her close. We did the right thing. Together, as the sun set over Riverside Meadows, I felt genuinely at peace. The nightmare was over. Karen was behind bars. Our community was stronger than ever. The next day, I received a letter from the FBI. Inside was a check for $7,300, my portion of recovered funds from Karen's embezzlement schemes. The FBI had seized her hidden assets. After restitution, there was money left over for harmed communities and individuals. I donated the entire amount to the Riverside Meadows Community Fund, earmarked for the George Martinez Memorial Garden. Money stolen through lies would build something beautiful, honoring a man who stood for truth and integrity. The garden was completed in June, 1 year after the 4th of July barbecue. Raised beds for vegetables, flowering plants, benches, and a plaque, George Martinez Memorial Garden, in honor of a man who believed strong communities are built on honesty, fairness, and neighbors looking out for one another. At the dedication, Barbara spoke about George's legacy and how his values helped the community survive. She announced new policies: mandatory credential verification for board members, regular independent audits, clear complaint processes, and a handbook outlining actual rules. "George always said good governance is transparent governance," Barbara concluded. "We honor his memory by making sure what happened with Karen Whitmore can never happen again." Standing in that garden, surrounded by neighbors who'd become genuine friends through adversity, I realized something. Karen tried to destroy our community, but instead made it stronger. She forced us to examine systems, strengthen oversight, and come together. Her attempts to divide us unified us. Her lies made us value truth. Her fake authority taught us to question and verify. Her cruelty reminded us to be kind. In trying to corrupt George Martinez's legacy, she actually reinforced it. 1 year later, Riverside Meadows was thriving. The garden produced vegetables for dozens of families. The HOA ran smoothly with transparent finances. Property values increased because people genuinely wanted to live in a community known for integrity and mutual support. Karen remained in federal prison, where she'd stay for 2 more decades. News reports said she worked in the prison library and attended counseling. Whether she understood what she'd done or was playing another role, I didn't know. But she couldn't hurt anyone anymore. The 4th of July barbecue became an annual tradition. Each year, we'd gather in my backyard, grill burgers, and remember how we stood together against someone who tried to tear us apart. And every year, someone would toast to truth, to community, and to never letting the Karens of the world win. Because that's what it was about. Not HOA rules or property values or perfect lawns. It was about good people refusing to be bullied, standing up for what's right, and protecting the communities they loved. Karen called the cops on my barbecue. She lied about her credentials. She filed false complaints. She sued me for $250,000. She tried to embezzle from our community, but I exposed her fraud, documented everything, stood my ground, and helped put her in prison for 22 years. And that is how you deal with a Karen. Justice was served. Karen got 22 years in federal prison. The community became stronger than ever. Karen got exactly what she deserved. Have you ever seen a more satisfying ending to an HOA drama? Let me know in the comments what you thought of this story.